Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Breakthrough 2021. Let's bring to the stage your host, Patrick Jackman, founder of the Jackman Group, LLC, and founder of Breakthrough Small Business and Leadership Conference. Let's welcome Patrick.
Hey, good morning, all. Welcome to Breakthrough Small Business and Leadership Conference. I want to thank you for being here this morning. This is a momentous occasion. This is the first ever Breakthrough Small Business and Leadership Conference. You know, breakthrough is defined as a sudden, dramatic, and important discovery or development. And as we go through this day, I want to make sure that we're going to focus the next 3 days on your team breakthrough, your breakthrough, and your business or your organizational breakthrough. Of course, this couldn't have been made possible without the help of our sponsors, our presenting sponsor, Tender Love and Family Care, our supporting sponsors, Stephanie Jackman, PLLC, and Livy's Jamaican Restaurant. I want to thank all of them. I also want to thank our tech crew. I want to thank our entire team who has put this all together. We are at this point because of you. Without you, we wouldn't have made this possible. So I want to thank you. Certainly thank you for being here this morning. You're in store for something special. You're in store for a breakthrough. You're in store for taking it from where you are to where you desire to be. You know, sometimes we reach a plateau, whether you are a small business owner, an entrepreneur, whether you are a leader or a key decision maker. Sometimes we reach a point where we cannot go any further. And that's where we need assistance. So we've put together this conference, 3 days of dynamic content, dynamic speakers, engaging speakers that will help you, not only help you, but give you the tools necessary, the insight, the encouragement necessary to go forward. Now we have 3 days. Some of you may be with us for 1 day. Some of you may be with us for 2 days. My hope and desire is that you stay with us for all 3 days because we have something really special in store for you. We met with our speakers on yesterday. We did our final walkthrough, and they can't wait to bring the information to you. And I can't wait to get this started because I know without a shadow of a doubt, by the end of Friday, you'll have walked away with things necessary that can take you to the next level. You know, we can give you the keys, but ultimately it comes down to you driving the car. So starting today, starting right now, we're going to give you those keys. We're going to give you all the tools necessary to make sure that you are ready for a breakthrough. Whether it's your team, you, or your business. We're going to make sure that when you leave, you have everything necessary to go to the next level. You know, I've been at this now in terms of being a small business owner, an entrepreneur, the Jackman Group. We're in operation, a training and development team. We started back in December of 2010. And we've seen our ups, we've certainly seen our downs. But throughout it all, what I found is consistency, service to our customers, service to our team members has brought us from the downs up to the ups, right? From the valleys up to the mountaintops. So we're going to go through ups and downs. As businesses, you're going to go through ups and downs. As entrepreneurs, you're going to go through ups and downs. But as you study entrepreneurs, there are a couple of things that come to mind. Consistency, hard work, commitment, and dedication. the need to be helped by someone else, community. So we're going to talk about all those things as we go through the next 3 days. As I said, we have some dynamic speakers, starting off with our keynote and ending on Friday with one of my mentors. So today, you're going to experience something and you're going to say, wow, where do these people come from? Because I think we have brought to you a dynamic and exciting team. And I will put these team members, these speakers, up against any speakers. They may not have the name recognition nationally or internationally, but I guarantee the content and the information that they're going to give you will match with anyone else that's internationally or nationally known. I guarantee, because I know them personally, I know them professionally. So just to set the stage for you, you came in through the dashboard and then you registered to get to this meeting. You can go back and forth at any time. So if you decided to leave, to come back, you just come back through the dashboard and come back in. The dashboard is there for your help. We have many things up on the dashboard. You can see the bio of the speakers on the dashboard. You can also see what we do as an organization, the Jackman Group LLC. And you can see our sponsors. We're going to give you an opportunity to mix and mingle over tomorrow. So we have lots in store for you. There are some surprises that will come your way. So stick around. Make sure that you don't go too far. If you have to go to a meeting, go to that meeting and come back. Do me a huge favor, if you can, at this point. I want you, on your social media posts, go ahead and post that you are in the meeting, that you are at Breakthrough Small Business and Leadership Conference. Invite your friends, invite your colleagues, even invite some of your enemies, because they need the information as well. So I look forward to having you. It is going to be a fantastic time. Let's get together. Let's bring this thing together. Let's make it happen. As I said, breakthrough, the ultimate definition of breakthrough, a sudden, dramatic, and important discovery or development. And that is what we desire or we propose will take place over the next 3 days. So today is going to be focused on your team's breakthrough. Tomorrow we'll focus on your breakthrough. And Friday we'll focus specifically on your organization or your company's breakthrough. So it's divided into 3 separate and distinct days. Today, tomorrow, and Friday. Just to give you a couple of things, we will have lunch. The agenda is on a dashboard. Lunch today is from 12:45 to 1:30. And we will end the day roughly around 4 o'clock. We have speakers, and at the end of the day, we have an entertainer, world-class entertainer, that will entertain us and kind of give us that up that we need at the end of the day. So I'm looking forward to it. I hope you are too. We're going to have fun. I hope this is engaging. This is just not another Zoom meeting. As I tell our team and our tech team, let's not make this just another Zoom meeting. Let's make this an experience. So I hope that as we go through this, you will have an experience that you will never forget, meaning that it's a positive experience. So I want to thank you for coming once again. Enjoy it. Go ahead. Bring some others in. Tell some others, because it's here. It is free. You're more than welcome to spread the wealth. So invite your friends, your team members, your colleagues. Do that right now so that we can get this thing started. So I am going to exit. I want to thank you once again. Thank you for being here. Thank you to our sponsors, our presenting sponsor. Thank you to our tech team, awesome tech team, Oz and his team. I want to thank all of our speakers, and more importantly, I want to thank you for being present, for showing up. So as we go through, we ask that if you can take your camera off, let's see your faces. We want to see who's here, and enjoy yourself. So I'll come right back. We're going to play a little music. I'll come right back and I'll introduce our first speaker for the day. Thank you once again.
All I do is win, 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 no matter what. Got money on my mind, I can never get enough. And every time I step up in the building, everybody hands go up, go up, go up, go up.
Okay, our first speaker. He's our keynote speaker for today. And his name is Paul Miller, and his bio is on the dashboard. So I'm not going to give his whole bio because I looked at it yesterday. I was like, wow, he has done a lot. When you look at his bio, you will agree. He comes with tremendous accolades, with tremendous letters after his name. So I welcome to the stage, welcome with me, our keynote speaker for this morning, Paul. Paul, it's all yours, Paul. Take it away.
The world spit me out, and I was still...
Patrick, thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you so much for having me here in this position. For those of you who saw the earlier edition of the agenda and saw that Anika D'Andrea was to be the keynote, Anika is a dear friend of mine and a business partner, couldn't be here. It reminded me of, and this puts a lot of pressure on me, the 1973 Oscars when Charlton Heston, Moses in the Ten Commandments, didn't show up, and Clint Eastwood had to fill in. And he says, how could I possibly fill in for Moses? Well, how could I possibly fill in for Anika? I'll do my best. We'll talk about a lot of interesting things today. I'll try to keep myself in time, and we'll move forward. Today, we're going to talk about leadership, but leadership in a different way. And what Patrick was talking about is these three different areas of leadership: interpersonal, intrapersonal, and organization. We're going to talk about that a little bit, and we're going to talk about how they fit together within a model of resiliency and psychological resiliency. So that'll be the focus of the day today. So let's just 4 quick objectives to learn how leadership builds resiliency, and resiliency builds leadership. I don't see those things as different. I think that you can't have leadership without resiliency, and you can't have organizational resiliency, and you can't have personal resiliency unless you have individual and personal leadership. We'll learn how leadership can move you out of a place called the fear zone, which can stop you and stop your business from moving forward. We're also going to learn how to use leadership in lots of different areas to build your resiliency, okay? And we're going to talk a lot about connections and how you can use resiliency to build connections and connections to build leadership. Okay. So before we get going, if we're going to talk about resiliency, we really need to talk about what it is. And it's really the ability to bounce back from negative experiences. But not just bounce back, but also to be flexible as demands change, and how to grow from the challenges. If ever we need to focus on resiliency and the ability to bounce back and change, it's now. As entrepreneurs, as small business people, coming out of the pandemic, some of you have thrived, some of you have kept your head above water, and some of you are just treading right now. This is the time for your resiliency to build within yourself, to step forward and to use that resiliency to make your business, to make your vision, because your vision is bigger than your business, to grow. I always think about this in terms of Eastern philosophy, and the Chinese symbol for crisis, Huaijin, it's called. It's made up of 2 symbols, danger and opportunity. We're in a crisis right now, and you have a choice. Do you go down a path of danger, Or do you seize the day, carpe diem, and seize the opportunities that are there? And how do you move from danger to opportunity? It's through resiliency. It's through your own personal resiliency, your resiliency in the way that you relate to people, and the resiliency you bring into the organization. Okay. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. You can get this at any business school. You know, it's John Maxwell's Levels of Leadership. But I want to point out two important pieces. At the very, very bottom of leadership, according to Maxwell, is leadership of position. That's you have a title, you have a place, you're the CEO of your company. So people follow your rules because you say to do it. At the top of it is leadership through respect, legitimate authority from vision, legitimate authority through personal connections, and legitimate authority through integrity. And that matters. We're going to move past this positional stuff. Excuse me. Patrick talked about some of my titles. They don't mean anything. I can list, I'm the director of a doctoral training program. I'm a clinic director. I teach at a law school. I'm the chief innovation officer at TLC Virtual Resiliency. And all that does is give me a lot of lines on LinkedIn. What sits behind it, the ability to move forward, the ability to me, a way that I can take and change the world and move it, okay? And at the same time, be successful, personally, interpersonally, and yes, economically. It's important. That comes at that pinnacle level. The stuff at the position, the titles, the accolades, all of that, very, very nice. It might get somebody to read something about you. But if you want to move your organization forward, if you want to take your project and see that vision to the end, it's not about the positional authority. It's about leadership through legitimate authority and integrity. Resiliency helps you get there. And we're going to talk about that. Okay. So the goals we're going to talk about in leadership today are three-tiered. We have our personal leadership, we have our organizational leadership, and we have our interpersonal leadership. And I want to talk about each one of these just a little bit. When we talk about personal leadership, what's driving your life? Okay. What's your intentions when you wake up in the morning? Do you set an intention? Every morning I get out of bed, I say to myself, this is my intention for the day. And I set two intentions. My big, broader one, where I'm going with projects, with life, and then my smaller ones. And a smaller intention might be, I am going to elevate the people around me. And that can either be the people I work with, or it could be striking up a conversation with the barista. When I get up, it didn't show up. When I get my Starbucks, that's my only prop, and it didn't show up. But every morning I have a chance to do that, to make an intention to elevate the people around me. That's my intentions. I also have intentions about my organization. So personal leadership has to be about intentional living. It also has to be about real goals. And real goals are not the stuff you put on vision boards. I coach an awful lot of mental health professionals who are trying to build larger group practices. And I asked them, where do you want to go? And they're like, well, I want to have a house on, the Gulf Coast of Florida. I want a better car. I want a boat. That's not a goal. That's what comes out of it. The goal is what drives you. Okay. What's making you feel whole? What are you trying to create? What kind of vision are you setting for yourself in moving forward? Because the stuff will come past that. Okay. So personal leadership is getting on that car and driving it in the direction to the place that you want to be, not the stuff that you want to get. The next level is probably the place that most people have heard about and talked about before. It's a place that most business schools, I teach in a law schools talk about this, and this is organizational leadership. Okay, how do we move an organization? How do we get the people around us to move forward, to do the things that we need them to do so that you can meet those personal goals of having an organization doing the kinds of things that make you feel centered and whole? And that might be productivity goals. It might be how to get your organization to thrive through change. That's what we're focusing right now. And notice how I'm not saying survive through change. Your organizational goal is not surviving. Your organizational goal is thriving. Okay. And one of the ways to do that, and an important part of leadership, is promoting effective and efficient resource management. Personal resources, financial resources. Time is probably the most important resource, because as you're growing your small business, as you're becoming a resource, everybody is chief cook and bottle washer. Everybody feels like they're all hands on deck. And at some point in time, that becomes very, very inefficient. So how do you take those limited resources, especially time, and how do you use that to move forward to point to your goal? We also have interpersonal goals here, okay? And interpersonal goals, how do you get your organization to work better? By you working better with the people around you. More effective communication, the ability to listen so you can be heard. So important. The ability to communicate with people in ways that they don't see as aggressive or nonviolent, even as you're trying to be a leader. But at the same time, getting them to follow through where they need to follow through, respecting their ideas, using their ideas to get forward, and then helping your organization thrive. Through that effective communication, you're going to help within your organization to build grit and perseverance, not only from the individual people, but you're going to build organizational grit and perseverance. All of that happens. And as you do that, and everybody's working together, and all of the gears are spinning in the same way, all of a sudden you start seeing group cohesion and you start seeing enhanced collaboration. Once you do that, then parts of the organization, whether or not it's one person talking to one, all of a sudden begin integrating, and they begin to boundary span, and the artificial, okay, that's your lane, this is my lane, comes together in a way that says, okay, this is our lane to be able to move forward to have the most effective outcome for the organization. So those are the three main areas. And over the next 3 days, you're going to hear a lot about organizational leadership, personal leadership. And maybe because I'm a psychologist, and maybe because this is just my bias and my bend, but I think that interpersonal leadership, that ability to get the people around you, okay, to believe in your mission, to believe in your approach to making your business better, your enterprise better, and your enterprise making the world better, sits underneath your personal leadership, how to move forward, as well as the organization itself. Now, leadership in these three areas require good vision and keeping your eyes on the goal. Okay, you see me in my tie and my big boy clothes. You know, it's a keynote. I gotta look keynote-y. So you get my tie, you get my jacket. I'm here. That's me. Actually, that's me celebrating 30,000 miles on my motorcycle. I pulled over the highway and took a couple of pictures because I thought that was a great milestone. I learned so much about vision and moving forward and our goals by riding a motorcycle. And I just want to share a quick story with you. I learned to ride when I was much younger. And then I stopped riding for about 25 years until my kids grew up and I felt safer to be on a motorcycle and not have young kids to worry about. Now I have old kids, adults, so it gives me a little bit more flexibility. When I first started riding again, one day I was driving to work and there's an interchange just before the university I work at, which is really, really nasty and congested. And I'm in the middle lane and I'm new on the bike again, so I'm being very, very cautious. And all of a sudden I say, big Jeep right in front of me, white on white, jam on their brakes. And all of a sudden, this wall of white is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm like, oh no, you know, this might be it. I can't stop in time. And I went back to some of my original training on my motorcycle and then retraining once I decided to ride again. which told me always look where you want the motorcycle to go. The bike will always follow you. Now, when I first heard that, I thought it was a slogan like keep your hands at 10 and 2 when you're driving, or eyes on the road. Who pays attention to those kinds of things? The motorcycle follows your eyes. I had no choice. It was the only tool I had left. So I looked to my left, cars, it's rush hour. I look to my right, cars, it's rush hour. And that's where the exit is. And I'm in the middle lane with a big white SUV coming up on me. So the only place to go is that dotted line that separates the lanes. And with all of my might, I looked down on the ground and I trusted in my training. And I said, I'm going to look at this line and I hope the motorcycle gets there. Because my instinct is to look at the back of the back of the SUV and watch it get closer and closer and closer. And if my instructors were correct, that would have led me to a crash. So I look and I'm thinking and I'm really, really hard getting there. And lo and behold, I land on the line. And as soon as I'm there, I'm like having a party on my motorcycle. So I'm on the line and I slow down and I look at the woman who's driving the SUV, who, by the way, had a Hofstra University sticker where I was heading. So it was a student at the university who could have killed me. And I just waved at her gently and kept going forward. What that taught me, and was so important as a life lesson, not a motorcycle lesson, is if you don't have a vision to where you want to go, you'll never get there. Okay. You have to focus on the end game, on the goal. You can then move station to station to get there. But without a goal, without an intention, you have no place to go. And if you have no place to go, where are you leading people? Where are you leading yourself? To nowhere. Where are you leading your organization? To nowhere. Where are you leading the people around you? To nowhere. Okay. Your vision drives your leadership. And if you feel that you don't have a good vision in these three areas, interpersonal, personal, and organizational, one of the first tasks you should do after this workshop is have a good hard think, sit down with a piece of paper or on your computer, as the times are now, and say, okay, let me just get started and think about, okay, what are my goals in these areas? And not those concrete goals like I want my organization to, sell $40 million within the next 2 years. Okay, good goal. Okay, but that goal is supporting something else. That goal is supporting your success, your vision for what the company does and provides to your community. That's what you look at, and then you narrow it down like a funnel. Okay. So what's the relationship here between resiliency and leadership? That's where we started. Well, it's simple. Resiliency leads to leadership. Leadership leads to resiliency. You can't separate those things out. If you have leadership and leadership skills, but not resiliency, as soon as you hit the first bump in the road, your leadership is going to collapse. On the other hand, if you don't use your sense of resiliency, your flexibility, your ability to bounce back, your ability to see things differently towards those goals with those people in that very, very specific way that's going to get to that vision, then you have no leadership. Then you might be a very, very flexible person that's standing still. They have to go together. Okay. The biggest thing that interferes with leadership is fear. It's the biggest barrier to leadership. Okay. So we call this, at PLC Virtual Resiliency, we often talk about this as the fear zone. Okay. And the fear zone is supported by fearful thoughts, fearful feelings, and fearful actions. Fearful thoughts are probably the most debilitating. And these are the what ifs. These are the things that just ruminate in your head. What if I can't hire enough employees? What if we get closed down again? What if I can't pay all my bills? What if, banks start calling on loans? What if I can't pay my bills? What if the SBA program goes away? And of course, why me? Why is the world doing this to me? from those thoughts, we also have feelings, and we feel disconnected. We feel isolated. And this is the hardest thing as an entrepreneur, when you start feeling alone and by yourself, because you feel those walls are closing in on you. And that's so important, to have a group of other entrepreneurs around you, to be part of a community of people who are like-minded, who are thinking together, where you can feel like you belong, and most important, where you can problem solve, build up your resiliency together, build up your leadership together, and help your individual organizations. Another place to go, and you'll hear a lot about this over the next 3 days, is having a mentor or a business coach to be able to help you through all of these things. That isolation, that feeling alone, that feeling like you have to shoulder it by yourself, makes it harder for you to do it. It weights you down. It exacerbates some of these negative thoughts, and that starts crushing your organization, your entrepreneurship, and you as an entrepreneur. All of these things can affect actions: bad sleeping, poor eating. All of a sudden you begin to feel like, oh my God, there's a toilet paper shortage, and I have a service industry that I'm running. I have a bar, I have a restaurant, and in the middle of the pandemic, when there was no toilet paper, you didn't know, was that going to last 6 months or 6 years? So all of a sudden, you have a basement full of paper products because you think you're disappearing. And then when it comes back, you're like, well, you never know, it's going to happen again. So you continue to buy all of those paper products until it's the largest part of your budget. Not a good approach. You become hypervigilant, thinking that the next shoe is always going to drop, one after another, and then actually bad coping strategies, and whether or not it's drinking, pulling back to yourself, arguing with people, fighting with people. This fear zone, stops you in your track from moving forward. The fear zone, any one of these actions, starts withering away your leadership capabilities and all 3 layers of your leadership. Okay. I'm going to jump past this just for a second. So how do we do this, and how do we move forward with these 3 areas that we're going to build both resiliency and leadership together? Changing our thoughts, improving our connections with employees, connections with people that we care about, connections with other entrepreneurs who are working with us, connections with mentors. All of those are critical in moving forward. And then, of course, taking care of ourselves physically. And paying attention to our physical health, because one of the things that we know, and I know as a psychologist, is that you can't separate out mental health and physical health. So if you're like, I'm just too burnt out, the gym's closed, I can't do anything, so I'm going to eat pizza every night. Well, the gym being closed and you eating pizza have nothing to do with each other. Just convenient that since you're not doing one thing, you can do another thing. So paying attention to your physical wellness helps with connections, helps with thoughts. And also, when we think about physical, setting up physical environments that you feel good and comfortable with. So good workspaces that you begin to feel, this is my space, although we don't like it. I'm in an office here right now, and I had to specifically modify it because I'm Zooming all the time now, and not to accommodate Zoom, but to accommodate Paul Meller sitting in this room Zooming. It needed to be my space. It needed to be my healthy place for me to go and move forward in my visions. Okay. Quick a little thing. Leadership comes in all sizes and shapes. And people think about leadership. They think about, Bill Gates. They think about Steve Jobs. They think about Elon Musk. Bobby Kennedy once said, few people will have the greatness to bend history itself, but each of us can work to change a small portion of events, and in the total, all of these actions will be written in the history of this generation. I love this. It's a fancy way of saying act globally, think globally, act locally. Your goals, your leadership has multiple layers and levels. You can be the leader within yourself, for yourself, very, very small. For your family, very, very small. For your extended family, a little bit bigger. For your community, a little bit bigger. For your organization, it might be small now, it might be you, but in time, it's going to be much, much bigger. So think about leadership at all of those levels, not the big, big level. Remember, Apple, Microsoft, both started in a garage. You have to start somewhere. Small bits of leadership lead to great things. Okay. And as we look through that, we can see that there are different groups of people that we're dealing with. The most inner circle is your immediate family, your coworkers, your employees, your close friends. If you put those people together, now you have connected groups. And these are the combinations of people from your inner group to your bigger community, church, business organizations, chamber of commerce, things like that, to even broader and bigger, sometimes even national organizations. You can show leadership at each and every one of these levels. Okay. One doesn't exclude the other. And you don't have to say, okay, I'm at the inner group level. That's all I'm going to focus on. You can actually approach each one of these simultaneously. Just be aware of your resources. You don't want to overextend those resources so you're not making leadership contributions at any level. Find your spots, not that are convenient, but find your spots that are meaningful at each one of these levels. Okay. So where to start? Okay. First things first, I love these community gardens. I think they're great. Okay. Start with your community garden, your organization, tend to it, plant the seeds, take care of it, nurture it, pay attention to it. And it's that place that you can have an immediate and direct impact. By the way, on the personal level, that garden is your family, your closest family and your closest friends. You can't let one aspect of your life overwhelm the other pieces. They all go together. They all act synergistically. Healthy people around you that are supporting you helps you have a healthier business and it will grow. Okay. Look for change places in all three of these target areas. Look for goals, intentions in all of these target areas. It doesn't happen accidentally. If you don't set intentions and goals in each one of these three areas, nothing happens and you hit the back of the SUV. Okay. So it's not good enough to intend to do it. I don't know if anybody's ever heard the old saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And you're like, I intended to have good goals for everybody, but I got so busy and so overwhelmed and there was so much to do, I didn't pay attention to it. So I wasn't steering the boat and I ended up aground or sinking it. My intentions were good. My actions were catastrophic. Okay. Goals help set those actions. Find out where your fear zone is and where the blocks are. Pay attention to them and try to eliminate them. By the way, your connections can help a lot in decreasing facets of your fear zone. And what are you going to do? You're going to change thoughts, connections, and physical factors to overcome these barriers. Okay, so in the last couple of minutes, I know I should only have 3 steps because you're not going to remember 10, but this will get posted and you'll be able to have it. 10 quick steps to building leadership. 1, orientation. Move towards the goal. Set the goal, not an arbitrary goal. Set an intentional goal. It should be meaningful and find the power of your purpose. Okay. There's a light inside of you. That light is shining towards something. That's why you started your business. Okay. You need to orient towards that and move forward. Now, as you're moving forward, okay, you have to be flexible, okay? And a good rule of thumb is that you be stubborn towards the goal. Your goal doesn't change, but you're flexible which route gets there. No different than driving in your car. If you're driving in your car and all of a sudden there's a traffic jam, your goal stays the same. You're still trying to get to the same place, but now you're looking for different routes. So one of the keys to leadership is to stay stubborn towards the goal, but be flexible towards how you get there in the route. As you're doing that, now you're creating more moving parts. So you want to create a sense of stability. Stressful situations have a lot of moving parts, and it increases a sense of instability. So make sure that you have a sense of what's the anchor for yourself, what's the anchor for your team to create stability so that they feel that they can move forward. I want everybody just to do something really quickly. If you're sitting by a desk and you have a paper and pencil, just grab the pen. If you're sitting in front of the computer, put your hand on the keyboards. Okay, you ready? Take your 2 feet and lift it off the ground. Now try to write or type something. Go ahead. Just type your name, write your name. You have a hard time doing that. Something that's as simple and overlearned as writing or typing now becomes an exceedingly difficult task. Why? Because your feet provided stability to your core, which provided stability to your shoulders, which provided stability to your hands. If you get rid of stability, the entire system starts collapsing. You really want to test this out? After we're done here, take your feet, pick it up off the floor, and try to write an email with your feet hanging up in the air, okay? It is so difficult, and for most of you, you'll cramp up and say, why would I even think about doing that? Because that's what your organization feels like when the stability is taken away from it, okay? You have to accept ambiguity, okay? You know, sometimes you don't know the answers. Sometimes you're poking around in the dark. And that's okay. Running to the heat, I love this. Don't be afraid to run to the difficult things. Frederick Douglass wrote a lot about running to the heat in lots of different ways. And that obviously in his situation early in his life, having fears of still being enslaved and consequences of that were dramatic. And the way he developed personal strength was to face those fears, to confront those fears, and to not let it change his vision and goal for himself and for the world. Okay. Be open-minded with yourself. Be open-minded with other people. You can think in the same way, convergently or divergently. A brick can be used to build a house. A brick is also a piece of art. Back in my other office, I have a brick right on my credenza that I use as a centerpiece because it looks good there. It can also be a good paperweight. It can also be, I don't know if any of you are foodies, but I learned this trick on the Food Network. You take a brick, you put it on a piece of chicken, and the chicken cooks better. Who would have thought that? Well, somebody did because they were open-minded in what to do with a brick. Start every day with an intention. We talked about that, okay? Intentions can be small, doable, manageable. And if they are bigger, make sure that you break it down into a smaller piece so you can meet your intention every day. You might not meet your goal every day, but you're going to meet your intention, which moves you to the goal. Okay. Show up. Let me say that again. Show up. And one more time. If you're not there, if you're not present, if you're not mindful in what you're doing, nothing happens. Showing up is probably the most important of all of these. We also talked before about conserving resources and recognizing that we have limited resources in money, in time, in our own psychology, our own patience, our own ability to give. Warren Buffett and Abraham Lincoln, two pretty good historical figures, both thought that no was the most important word in the English language. And not to say no to people all the time, but when new ideas came and said, let's try this, let's try this, let's try this, and it sapped resources away, you have to at some point in time say, no, that's not what I'm doing now. It's not working towards my ultimate goal. It's actually pulling resources from it. I can come back to it later, but for now, it's no. If anybody wants to read Warren Buffett's writing on that, there was a great article in the Wall Street Journal about Warren Buffett and no that came out about 2 months ago. And finally, be reflective. Okay. And this goes back to the idea of in any crisis situation, there's danger and opportunity. If you wait till after the crisis to be reflective, you might be sitting inside the danger. You have to be reflective in the moment. You have to be able to work those cognitive, those intellectual muscles, those interpersonal muscles in getting people around you to work with you. And you have to work your leadership skills in real time when things are in crisis, not after. Okay, let me just end this with one final thought. I think it's important for you to do this. I think it's important for you to be able to follow that dream, that goal that you have. There's a light inside of you that's pointing you in that direction. So my final thought to you is the light in me sees, acknowledges, and honors that light in you. And I hope you allow that light to shine today. Thank you.
Dr. Paul, that was fantastic. I want to thank you. What great words of wisdom. I took three things. I took a lot, but three things I wrote down here was the importance of community. You can meet your intention every day. And lastly, show up. I love it. You show up, show up, show up. What great words of wisdom. Wise man, Dr. Paul. I want to thank you once again. Let's hear it for Dr. Paul, ladies and gents. All right. Dr.
Thank
Paul,
you for having me.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Feel free to stick around. You are our friend. So Dr. Vicky says, excellent presentation. So thank you, Dr. Vicky. So if you want to put any comments in there, go ahead and put some comments. If you have any questions for Dr. Paul, go ahead and put that in the chat. And wow, my brother has showed up. Akeem, powerful. Thank you so much. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Anything that you want to put in the chat, the chat is open. Let's see. Who else do we have here? We have someone else in the chat. Let me get to that. Ben Corey, it was very interesting how resilience and leadership are tied. That is great. So we are going to utilize the chat. Terry Graham says, amazing. So we're going to utilize the chat as we move forward. I know our next speaker that's coming up, she is going to ask you to utilize the chat. So the chat is our friend. We may not unmute you to ask some questions, but if you have any questions, put it in the chat and I will be the chat person for now. So, okay. Let's see. Where are we? Welcome everyone. Again, if you joined us late, I want to welcome you to Breakthrough Small Business and Leadership Conference. I am Patrick. I am the founder and chief consultant of the Jackman Group LLC and the host of Breakthrough. Again, our sponsors, we want to thank our presenting sponsor, Tender Love and Family Care, our supporting sponsors, and we want to thank you. We want to thank you for showing up. This is just the beginning. Dr. Paul has set the bar high. I don't know how the other speakers will have to meet this bar. Wow, what an amazing time. So, Dr. Paul, you did it, man. You did it. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, we are going to move into our next speaker. Things are going to start moving quickly. Again, utilize our chat. CJ is ready to go. So without further ado, I want to welcome to the Breakthrough stage, all the way from Las Vegas, my good friend, DJ. DJ, welcome.
And wow, how about Dr. Paul Meller? He has absolutely kicked off this conference with such great leadership takeaways. I am a certified John Maxwell team member. So when he referenced the levels of leadership by John, Paul, you instantly became my favorite person of the day, I promise. So I was really excited to have some opportunities to your presentation. And Patrick's right, I don't know how I'm going to follow this, but I promise I have some good things in store for you. You know, there was a word that Paul used that really resonated with me, and the word was intentional. And that's going to be a thread that we're going to continue throughout our conversation today. I have a few slides that we're going to put up on screen here in just a moment as we get into our discussion. But I really want to thank you all for joining me today as we walk through the conversation regarding keys to effective recruiting and hiring. Now, I want to just clear the elephant in the room, and yet we're just going to put it out there. The current temperature of the candidate market is insane. It's crazy, right? So I'm excited to spend the next hour with you in this conversation. This will be a very interactive session. So coming in ready with your video cameras on and your chat box open. Patrick mentioned we are going to have a lot of dialogue in the chat box. So I'm really going to lean in to learn from you, just like you're here for the next 3 days to learn with us, right? I promise you'll have a much more engaged experience that you will actually get more out of. In fact, let's actually head over to the chat box right now. Just everybody pull up their chat box. And I want you to think of one word, just one, and type it in that best describes how you're currently feeling about the current state of recruiting and hiring as it relates to your world. Just one word. Go ahead and think about it. How are you feeling about the current temperature of recruiting and hiring as it pertains to you? So let's go ahead and take a look at the chat. While you all are thinking about that one word, I'll share with you, I was actually visiting with some colleagues the other day and asked them the same question. Words like paranoid and stressed and optimistic and depressed and anxious and so many others came to mind. So I'm really interested in learning from you today. Looks like we've got timing, loyalty. So these are all great. All of them are valid. How you're feeling right now about the struggles and the challenges, in some cases, on finding good quality talent for your team or your future state is okay. You're not alone, I promise. You know, I've always said that recruiting is not rocket science, but there is a science to recruiting. So I'm actually going to start off by telling you what the keys to successful recruiting and hiring are not. That's right. It is not about throwing hundreds or thousands of dollars into more job postings or social media advertisements, or even upgrading to the Ferrari of an ATS system, an applicant tracking system. Now, all of these add value to your overall strategy, but they're not the drivers. You are. Let me explain. As a business owner or hiring manager, understanding where you've been, what your current state is, and what you want your future state to look like is what's going to provide you the foundation to build a solid recruiting and hiring strategy that's going to complement your overall business vision. So let's start out by looking at how companies are navigating the economics. And I'm going to share my screen here with you. Bear with me. There we go. All right. I hope everybody can see that. Fantastic. So many of you all attending the conference may be contemplating or in the process of starting a new business. Some are existing business owners. And at the end of the day, we're all entering into what some are calling the post-pandemic era. Now, nobody wants to even utter the C word, right? They're tired of hearing about COVID. People are getting antsy, we're restless. But I'm here to tell you, COVID, whether we like it or not, the pandemic era is now ingrained in our history, just like the Great Depression, right? Just like the dot-com era, just like the real estate crash. All of this has become part of our history. How we approach it, our attitude, our movement through some of these struggles defines who we are as character. You know, it defines our character, but who we are as business owners. And many business owners, like yourself, have been impacted by the pandemic downturn. In fact, I attended a board committee meeting for the staffing industry just the other day. And I was reminded that businesses of all sizes and employees of all skill levels and tenure were hit, and they were hit pretty hard. Some businesses just couldn't survive. They had to close their doors. They couldn't survive financially, even with PPP assistance. Others barely got by, but not without having to reduce their staff or adjust operating hours or even scale back in many ways. Many business owners opted to forego a paycheck personally. Think about that. Many of you said, I'm not going to pay myself because I want to make sure that I'm making payroll for my employees. They have families, they have bills. Yes, I do too. But that, my friends, I will tell you, that is the essence of a servant leader. That is who people want to work for and with. And so when you think about recruiting and hiring keys to success, that's the foundation level, right? You have to have a good, solid foundation. Many employees took a pay cut, but then there were those who actually fared well, both on the business side as business owners, as hiring managers, and as employees. Now, the impact ran the spectrum. There was zero discrimination as to who got hit or survived by the pandemic. Zero discrimination there. But in taking a step back and looking at the common threads in those that did survive, I found some interesting facts. The financial solvency of a company, number one, was key to their survival, even considering some of them had to perform some scale back initiatives. right? Some of them endured scaling back. Some of them had to reduce their headcount and their workforce. But companies had to cover a monthly total expense. We tend to refer to this as the nut. What's your monthly nut, and what do you have to cover? What does it take to cover the nut, right, for your organization? This includes money to recruit, hire, and train employees. Now, what I want you to do is go over to the chat box. This is going to be our first interactive piece. And I want you to tell me how many months of total expenses do you think a company should have in the bank as best practice? So if your total expense for the month is $5,000, is it $25,000? So is it 5 months? In your opinion, what do you think? Let's go ahead and take a look in the chat box and see what some of those thoughts are. So tell me in the chat box, how many months of total expenses do you think a company should have in reserves or in the bank as a best practice? Let's take a look. Ben says it seems 6 months seems too little. Ben, that all of which is a valid point, right? On average, 12 to 24 months as a reserve should be the dream. You are 100% accurate, Ben. Thank you very much for that. We've got a year from Sabrina. Right, these are all valid questions as it relates to your vantage point. The minimum suggestion is 6 months. I think that was pre-COVID. For companies and business owners and hiring managers that have gone through the pandemic, right, the last year and a half, 2 years of craziness, 12 to 24 months, I think, is probably what people are vying for. Now, many of the businesses that did not survive managed their business on a month-to-month basis, or at a minimum, only averaged 2 to 3 months of reserves in the bank. That's why they were hit the hardest. That's why doors closed. That's why employees became part of the unemployed. So here's your first takeaway to successful recruiting and hiring. I want you to write this down. I'd like for you to go back and assess your financial solvency. Be honest with yourself. And listen, if you have less than 6 months in the reserves, that's okay. You actually know where you stand. Tap into your local resources. Speak with your local banker about good financial practices. They have a lot of resources from a banking standpoint. Take a money management course. Many are actually offered at no additional charge with a LinkedIn subscription. And lastly, leverage your local chambers, your SBA and economic development resources, many of which are free. Especially when you're a small business owner, money's tight, budgets are important. What you know or knew of money management as it relates to business, even 5 years ago, even a year ago, has completely taken on a new face in some cases. Number 2, businesses are evaluating current headcount and performance against future growth strategies as it relates to their employee base. So what does this have to do with hiring and recruiting? Well, many business owners have indicated during the downturn, not only did they have to shift financially, but it actually opened their eyes to new ways of producing results, of doing business. Remote work is just one of those examples. They started with their current team. Given that money became tighter, they were literally taking money out of their own pocket to stay afloat and to pay employees, right? So they had to calibrate what success for each role looked like and how they were measuring it. It also took on a very different picture because of how they had to change the way they did business overall. Regarding their assessment of future state, businesses and leaders are currently undergoing a quarterly and in some cases monthly assessment of their key positions. So here's your second takeaway from this session. Go back and assess your current employee base and determine if success in each role looks the same as it did last year or even pre-COVID in 2019. If it is, ask yourself and even solicit your team's opinions, can success be improved upon? And if it can, what does that look like, right? If success looks different now than before, you actually may want to recalibrate how you're measuring it. So if you have a team in place, regardless of whether it is 4 people or 40, create a focus group, involve them, bring them into the conversation, and ask them to share what success in their role looks like to them. I promise you'll be surprised. Once you've completed that assessment, you're going to want to determine the key roles that, if lost, would negatively impact your business. Now, from there, You're either actively recruiting. I want you to listen to these words. You're either actively recruiting to fill a new role, or you are proactively pipelining for your next hire. You're either actively recruiting or you're proactively pipelining. Okay? There's no middle ground there. So last but not least, as it relates to navigating the economics, it's important to understand the economic impact to try and get in the minds of job seekers. Now, I get it. Sometimes that can be a place that you don't want to go, but it's necessary to understand their motivations. And that's a big part of successfully recruiting your next team member with the right person. You know, Patrick and I have had some conversations about, you know, you go through these interviews and you have these professional interviewers, right? They come in, they give you all the right answers. You kind of connect with them, you put them in the seat, you hire them, they start to work. And it is so far from what you thought the end result was going to be. So we're going to take a look at some data that's actually highlighted by the Economic Policy Institute. The data was actually pulled from a BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics analysis, where the current population was surveyed to come up with the data series. But before we do, I want to go back to the chat box. And I want you to tell me, according to the 2020 U.S. Census, there are 331 million people in the U.S. 331 people million people in the U.S. Now, I want you to think about, in your opinion, how many workers do you think were impacted by the COVID downturn? Just take a minute. How many people do you think, how many workers do you think were hurt, not injured, but hurt or impacted by the COVID downturn in the last year? What do you think? Some of the folks that I've talked to said 5 million. Some said 42 million, right? So depending on where they sit, the industry that they're in, they have a difference of opinion, right? What are your opinion? What's your opinion? How many workers do you think were impacted? So I want you to think about that as we continue. Now, did you know that in 2019, according to BLS, same time of year as we're in now, in 2019, unemployment was at an all-time low of 3.6%. In 2020, it skyrocketed to 14.8%. Now, fast forward to current state, as of May 10th, it was holding at 6.1%. Now, not as good, obviously, as 2019, but a slow improvement that brings optimism. As of May 3rd, it was reported that the elevated unemployment benefits will still continue through September. Now, why is all this important? Well, it's important to understand the number of people that were impacted, right? Financially, through job loss, through pay cuts, the fact that people who weren't normally unemployed find themselves unemployed, but in some cases, they're making more money today on unemployment with the added benefits than what they were pre-COVID. There's, again, the motivation factors that we have to take into consideration. That lends itself to some of those challenges that you're having in finding great talent. So understanding employment data gives us the ability not just to recognize the impact, but also to recognize the opportunities, right? So let's take a look as we continue to navigate the economics. Of the 331 million people in the US, just over 22 million were impacted, right? They were hurt or as a result of job loss, not physically injured, but hurt by the COVID pandemic. 4.6 remain employed, but experienced a pay cut. I know many of my colleagues experienced that. Some were making 150 and they ended up with 60,000 just to barely survive, right? So they had to shift and pivot positively to figure out the new world. 9.8 million are deemed officially unemployed. 4.4 million dropped out of the labor force for various reasons. Now, Paul actually earlier talked about the word fear. In this case, several workers said, not going into the office. This COVID thing is an unknown entity. We have no idea. My health and well-being is more important. And they are absolutely right in their own frame of thinking, right? It's interesting, the dichotomy that exists when you talk to people about COVID and the mask situation and all of that. But all of that lends itself into whether or not a candidate leans in and clicks the button to apply to your job or not. In this case, 4.4 million dropped out of the labor force. It could have been for health. It could have been to take care of a family member that experienced COVID or other health issues. And the biggest one was fear of the unknown. That was a huge driver for that statistic. 3.3 million are classified as unemployed, but they were actually misclassified as being employed or not even in the labor force. That's kind of the miscellaneous bucket that folks put them into. Now think about this. The original unemployed number, right? Catch this. The original unemployed number was just under 8.5 million. The reason that they're accounted for in the 22 million is because the pandemic made job searching more difficult, right? Let me summarize that again. Of the 22 million, 8.5 million were unemployed pre-COVID, but they're included in the 22 million because given an opportunity to find a job became much more difficult as a result of the pandemic. So they're part of that impact. But there is a silver lining. What is it that people today in current state are wanting to do? They're wanting to travel, they're wanting to socialize, they want to break bread, they want to gather with friends and family. So that means industries that are showing signs of revival include entertainment, leisure, hospitality. If you're a business owner, are you connected to what I would say a thriving or a soon to be back to thriving industry? And if not, look at your product and service. A lot of companies, when they went into the pandemic, were making cars and they ended up making PPE gear just to survive, right? So what you're doing pre-COVID, what you're doing today and what you want to do tomorrow, think with an open mindset, right? That's also going to come in and attract more talent as an interest in your organization. Are you an innovative organization? Are you a growth mindset leader? All of those things are what people want to work with and for. And of course, other industries are going to continue to follow as we go through the slow recovery period. So takeaway number 3, candidates that you're vying for, including those unemployed by the pandemic, are taking pause at rushing to get back to work for a few reasons. First, many hourly workers, as I mentioned, are actually making more money on unemployment than they were pre-COVID. So unless you're prepared to ante up and increase your salaries, your talent pool is going to continue to be tight, at least for the foreseeable future. Now, this topic alone could be a whole different conference session, Patrick, but it's part of our reality as hiring managers. It's something that we have to consider. So what can we do as hiring managers to think on a broader scale, that's going to give us leverage to increase that talent pool? The next is overall, people generally don't like change. When the pandemic hit, most businesses scrambled to figure out what in the world does this remote workforce structure look like? How do we manage through it? How do we trust? Are the employees actually going to be working, or are they going to be doing laundry? Or are they going to have to deal with their kids? It's a different mindset, and many business owners have evolved from where they were thinking or their line of thinking in 2019, right? Some did great and production actually improved while others completely struggled. And as a result, many candidates have become accustomed to working remote. So now businesses are weighing, and hiring managers are weighing the pros and cons of a positive return to office program. And I will tell you, candidates are making a hard and fast decision that remote work is a priority for them. And these are candidates, ladies and gentlemen, that have worked in an office setting for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. They had a taste of it, they're productive, they have a sense of well-being, better health in some cases, right? Their priorities are shifting. So we can either dig our heels in the sand as business owners and say, nope, we're going to continue to operate as we did pre-COVID with no consideration as to what's changed, mindset, operationally, structurally. But I guarantee you, if you stick your heels in the sand and you don't lean in and listen, or at least entertain differences on how you can run your business or how you can operate more efficiently or effectively in what we call the new norm, you're going to lose a lot of good talent. Talent is definitely assessing. They're savvier than ever. We're going to talk about that. And lastly, in some cases, and most important, many candidates are discovering, as I mentioned, that mental and emotional health and well-being is far worth more than how they actually defined career success pre-COVID. Think about that. There are many factors that influence a candidate's decision to re-enter the workforce. Now, these are just scratching the surface. So, what do candidates consider a priority when they evaluate an opportunity? Well, there's no perfect solution that meets every candidate's need, but there is a strategic approach that you can take to help solve the problem. Now, this is where I really want you to lean in, and I need your help in the chat box. I'd like to get your help with an activity. So let's go ahead and head over. Make sure everybody has their chat box on. All right. I need to total up, and I need your help. I need to total up 5 numbers. Now, 3 of which will represent you, which are the hiring managers, and 2 will represent the candidate. Now, I'll take the candidate numbers, right? So I'm gonna plug in 2 numbers, but I need 3 numbers from the audience today in order to do this exercise, right? So go over to the chat box, and here's how I'm gonna guide you with the numbers. I'd like everyone to think of a number that is between 1,000 and 9,999. And when you have that number, go ahead and type it into the chat box. I'm going to take the first 3 random numbers that show up, and you will now become the hiring managers. Perfect. Ben Corey, thank you so much. So we've got 4,750. So that's my first hiring manager. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we're going to lay this out. All right. So Ben Corey, I've got 4,750, and that's from Ben. All right, who is going to be my second hiring manager? Let's go ahead and get another number between 1,000 and 9,999 in the chat box. Who's going to be my second hiring manager, please? What do you think? Now, I can't come in with a number because I'm the candidate, right? So Ben, how about giving me another number? Let's have you be the hiring manager for all 3 of those numbers, if you will. What is another number? All right, perfect. Okay. Now, Ben, I'm going to ask you to hang tight for a second because, oh, that's okay. Because what I'm going to propose, ladies and gentlemen, is as a result of having 5 numbers, we're going to total them up and we're going to get a sum. But I'm going to predict with just this number what the sum will actually be, okay? I'm going to write it down on a sticky note, right? Let's see this. So this is going to be, let's see. Ben, you gave me 4,750. Okay. I think we can do this. Now, just so you guys know, I have this number, and I'm going to pop it right there. All right? Nobody can see it, I don't think. I'm going to put another little sticky over it just to hide the number. Okay, so I have my answer in advance. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and let's type in Ben's next number. And Ben, your number was 1,295. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and take C. I'm going to contribute a number, and my number will be, let's see, let's do 8,714. Okay, that's my number, right? Actually, let's do 8,704. Okay, now, Ben, your next number was, let me find you in the chat, 7,300. That's Ben. And then I'm going to go ahead. Now, Patrick, if you're hanging out with us, I want you to solve this for me and then put the total when I enter my number in the chat box, okay? So if you want to get a calculator out, or anyone else on the attendee, let's do, then you had 7,300, let's do 2,699, okay? All right, so does anyone have the sum of this equation? Let's see if we can get Patrick or Ben to sum this up for me.
And you want the sum of which one? Of your numbers or Ben's numbers?
All 5 numbers, Patrick.
Okay. And what was the first number Ben asked?
Are you all not able to see my screen?
No. Are you sharing?
Yeah, let's take a look. Yeah, I have been sharing. Can you all see that?
There we go.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. All right, so let's go ahead and sum up all 5 numbers here. And I'm going to watch the chat, Patrick. And let's see, we should have, that should be 24,748. Is that right? Patrick, is that what you've got? 24,748. $24,000. There you go. Perfect. Okay, so let's go ahead, and I'm going to stop sharing so you all can see this. So here we go. You ready? Pulling off the number. What's my number? 24,748. Now, how did I predict what the sum of the numbers would be when I had no idea what Ben's numbers were? Think about this. Let's talk about strategy. And I'm going to share my screen once again. All right, can everybody see this? So we took 5 numbers. Ben had 3 of those numbers as the hiring manager. I had 2 of them as the candidate. But I was able to predict, not knowing, and Ben, just type in yes or no, did I prep you for this? I had no idea that Ben was actually going to be the first one to help me with this activity. Did I prep you for this? Nope, nope, he says. Great. That's awesome. All right. So when we talk about the equation, right? The point here is that it doesn't matter if you only have half the equation. You can still find success by understanding where your points of power are and what you can control. You as a business owner can control things like the number of job posts, the type of technology you use, how long your hiring process is, right? Do you take 2 weeks to make a decision, or is it 6 months to make a decision? And if so, why? Candidates are only typically going to stay on what we call the shelf on an active market for maybe 72 hours. That's it. If they're good and if they're active and if they're interested. Then you have the passive candidates. Remember, we talked about reactive recruiting versus passive or proactively pipelining. The proactive pipelining includes those candidates that are looking at your brand. They're looking and leaning into your organization to figure out what you're all about. So I'd like to leave you with a few considerations, parts of the equation, if you will, that will help you gain leverage when building a strong recruiting and hiring strategy. Candidates, ladies and gentlemen, are more savvier than ever, and they are in the driver's seat in many ways. They are more vocal in sharing what they want, but what they don't want oftentimes comes out as a louder part of their voice, which is actually a positive thing for hiring managers if you lean in and you listen. Now, here are 6 considerations that are based on the candidate's priorities across multiple surveys from Gallup, Harvard Review, and many other job-focused or career-focused platforms that companies and hiring managers should take stock in. Number 1, everyone has hopefully heard of the term DEI or D&I. This is diversity, equity, and inclusion. In a world consumed by the pandemic, we are still impacted by racial injustice and discrimination across a myriad of differences as it relates to people. Now, while together, we are making small waves of positive change, there is still so much more that needs to happen on a consistent basis in this area on a global scale, but not just socially, professionally as well. So I want you to write this down. I recommend that you visit CEO Action Network. It's actually ceoaction.com. And as an executive or an overall company, you can take a diversity pledge. You also have access through this site to many program ideas. Some are going to talk about and build information in programs around ERG, employee resource groups. It helps support inclusion and diversity, right? You're going to be able to see what other companies are doing in this important area to not only promote, but live the essence of truly valuing differences. Listen, candidates today want to know where you stand as a company, as a leader. And it's interesting for me to talk to organizations and leaders of those organizations, and there's a fear of taking a stance one way or another. But taking no stance is still a decision made. And no decision, either way, will impact whether or not a top-level candidate wants to work with you, because that's a testament to your decision-making capabilities as a leader. Think about that. Today, for the first time ever, there are 5 generations that exist in the workplace. By 2025, millennials will make up 75% of the workforce. Effective communication is key here. Ladies and gentlemen, as you continue to understand your current team and look to add others that come from different decades, every single person holds value. The number one common thread of conflict among teams is a lack of understanding and effective communication. How do you communicate? How do they want to communicate? There's some amazing tools that I know Patrick has from a business coaching perspective, a leadership training perspective, that can really help you in that area. So Patrick, I'm going to lean into you for that one. Work structures, ladies and gentlemen, are being revamped for various reasons, right? Companies realize they don't need the massive square footage that they once were housed in. If you're in a virtual office as a small business owner, or even a smaller setting, is the work that you can do available via remote? That helps budgetary costs. Now, the downside in some cases to remote work is people need that human connection. Virtual conferences are great. I get to see you. There's no mask involved. All of these things are positive. So why not have a hybrid? Many companies are moving to a hybrid remote flex program. Now, due to lack of headcount from being downsized or having to downsize, companies have had to figure out how to still remain productive. Now, this has actually resulted in the use of automation systems, AI, chatbots, and more. Technology in some cases has really been a saving grace for organizations. And candidates are looking at this area with a keen eye. What is the flexibility that a company actually offers in order to get the job done and still support them from a personal stance? Now, I have a question for you. Why are we still mandating or requiring a resume? If we have a candidate fill out an application, why do we lean in and hold 90% of our hiring decisions based off a resume? Now, don't get me wrong. I come from staffing of 20 years. I think a resume is necessary, but I don't believe personally that it should be the driver of a hiring decision. Oftentimes, I get a resume, I box check some of the things. Yep, they've got some of the skill sets, but do I really know that they have it? How do I know? It's on a piece of paper. Unless I'm testing them for it or I'm validating degrees, which most background processes do, how do we really know what's truthful on a resume? We don't. In a lot of cases, we don't. Some things can be over embellished, some things can be expanded, and some things, quite frankly, just simply don't fit in a 1 or 2 page profile when you come with over 20 years or 15 years of experience. Look at some of the speaker bios. I guarantee you that is beyond a snippet, not even a snippet, I should say, of their accomplishments or accolades or skills or knowledge, intellectual knowledge that they bring to the table. Resume is the same thing, right? So sit down and talk to people, but lean in and have a meaningful hiring process, not just how much money do you want to make? How long were you there? Companies are reevaluating their hiring protocols, and they're actually moving away from resumes as a formality if the candidates are filling out the application. They're taking on a new life to conversation in the interview process. They're actually leaning into the soft skills and emotional intelligence of candidates as the 80% of the 80-20 rule, taking the approach that, listen, we can't teach, CJ, attitude, innovation, and culture fit, but we can teach the skills as part of our investment in our team members. And I'm here to tell you today that when you have the mode and method of investing in your people will in turn invest back in you. I promise you. We've seen it time and time again. I've worked with many global organizations throughout my career. And most recently, I'm seeing more companies bring a more robust total rewards program. Now, it's not just about salaries and benefits anymore. Given the pandemic that everybody went through, there's a heightened interest in programs such as EAP, employee assistance programs. Companies are bringing in employee stock purchase programs as an attraction piece, gym memberships. Some companies, I talked to one organization, and they've actually contracted and they're in discussions with Instacart and Uber Eats to take over and pay for their employees. They have a code that they're trying to develop and a process where the company actually pays the delivery fees and the service fees to give them greater access. It's not a lot. They're not paying for their lunch or they're not paying for the groceries, but it's something that the employees see that the employer has skin in the game with, right? Those are being incorporated creatively into the total packages and the perks for candidates. So let's talk about your pitch, last but not least. Now, in Vegas, not sure if anybody knows who, I don't know, some NFL football team called the Raiders are, right? But the Raiders Stadium, we're very excited to have them. I'm sorry if you live in California and you actually lost the Raiders, but we are excited to have them. Beautiful stadium. I don't know if anybody's ever seen it. If not, Google it. It's fantastic. Seats 65,000 people. Now, imagine, if you will, having the ability to speak at this packed house event in that stadium. Every single seat is filled, all 65,000 seats, completely filled. And they're filled with guess who? Top talent, the best of the best for every position, current and future state that you would ever need to hire for. Now, all are within your price range, but here's the kicker. You are up against 7 other companies, the exact same size as yours, exact same type of business, exact same location. So it's you just cloned 7 times over. Now, I'm also going to share with you that none of the candidates were interested in coming to your speaking engagement, but they were mandated to attend with one caveat. They had the ability to get up from their seat and leave as soon as you started to talk. So how do you keep them in their seats? How do you keep the candidates, these top talented individuals that could elevate your organization, in their seat? Well, just like we had 5 numbers, and Ben, thank you again for helping me with that. In our activity, I've just given you 5 pieces to the equation. Your pitch, ladies and gentlemen, is the sum of those pieces. Now, my 4th and final takeaway for keys to successful recruiting and hiring is to visit these strategy considerations and outline what you and your company is doing to build strength in these areas. So, in closing, there will be many, many, many great ideas, best practices, and inspiration that you're going to hear throughout the next 3 days. In fact, I believe Patrick has these sessions recorded and will be made available to you, and he'll give you more information on that. But here's the thing. I see so many leaders, including myself, come back from a conference and get back to the office, and they're so excited. They've got a laundry list of things, and they want to try and implement all of them, and then they get overwhelmed by competing priorities. And guess what happens? Nothing, right? Nothing gets implemented, nothing gets executed. It remains on a good idea list set aside that becomes piled on by competing priorities. So here's what I want you to do. I encourage you to continue to make a list or jot down ideas. Set them aside after the conference for a few days. Then pick up your list. Collaborate with a mentor, a partner, your team. Better yet, call Patrick. He's an amazing business coach. And define your top 2 or 3 items to focus on tackling. And take it baby steps at a time. Now, I will leave you with this. Remember, you are either reactively recruiting or proactively pipelining, and you have the pieces to the equation. It's just up to you now to solve the problem. Without further ado, I want to thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure having the conversation with you. I hope you've been able to pull some golden nuggets from this particular session. And I'd like to go ahead and send it over to Patrick.
Thank you, CJ. Awesome job. I appreciate it. Great nuggets. Let's see. You proactively recruiting or proactively pipelining?
It's reactively recruiting.
Reactively recruiting.
And proactively pipelining.
Pipelining. Okay. Reactively recruiting or proactively pipelining.
Yes.
I'm going to have to add those 2 to my list. So CJ, thank you so very much once again. Fantastic job. Let's see where we are in the schedule. Okay. So let's talk about developing your team. There are 3 areas that we're going to focus on. 3 specific components. And we're going to give you the strategies. We're going to talk about time investment, and we'll talk about output. So input, time, output, productivity. So 3 specific areas of what we call the continuum. John C. Maxwell says, good leadership isn't about advancing yourself. It's about advancing your team. Jack Welch says, before you were a leader, it was all about you. When you assume the leadership role, it's no longer about you. It's about your team. So how are you going to develop your team? 3 steps of the development continuum. 1 is at the beginner stage. 2, intermediate. And 3, the advanced. At each individual stage, there's a specific strategy that you use as a leader or as a manager that you will need to move the person forward. That's what we call the development threshold on the development continuum. So what is a beginner? The beginner could be someone brand new to the company, to your team, or it could be someone that's been within the organization that got a promotion and now starting at the very bottom, at the beginner stage. So they could have been at the advanced, but once you start a new position with a new team, you start at the beginner. I'll tell you a story. I was with one company and had some tremendous relationships. However, what took place was, and I hope that you can see my screen. Okay, here we go. What took place was I got a promotion. Actually, I left that job and went to another job. My boss at my new job says to me, I know you were good at where you were in terms of your last job. However, at this new job, new position, new company, you'll have to start from scratch. And I'm wondering, what? I have to start from the beginning? So I'm thinking now, with all my knowledge, with all my experience, I'm starting at the bottom. I'm starting from scratch. At that time, it didn't make any sense because I bring experience, I bring knowledge, I bring skill. So here's my boss saying, all right, I got to start from scratch. What I what she explained to me is that everyone that comes into a new organization, despite knowledge, skill, competency, you start as a beginner. And here's the reason why. The new company, the new team has an instilled culture. And Friday, Lisa is going to talk about culture. Certain norms, certain way of doing things. Certain products, new systems. So these are the things that you have to learn. Going from a former company to a new company. These are the things that you have to pick up. So you start at the beginner stage. That's the employee or the team member. As the leader, what happens? Or the manager. Here's what happens normally. The person comes in. The manager or leader says, go for it. We're going to throw you to the wolves. The old strategy of learn by doing. So you're out there not knowing what to do. You don't know if this is the right place. You're anxious, yet excited, but you're out on your own because of the reputation that you had, because you were good at one time. That's why they hired you. Well, we're going to flip that around. It's like building a house. When you build a house, you don't put the house up first, right? What do? You build the foundation, make sure the foundation is solid. Then you put the house on top of the foundation. Without a solid foundation, the house crumbles. So without a solid foundation from the beginner, it's more challenging for them to move up to that intermediate and advanced stage. You're not building a solid foundation there. So we throw the person out, we said, go get it, and we expect huge returns. So this is what happens, right? The manager or the leader at the point spends little or no time. In reality, it says, okay, sit with John, sit with Sarah, and they'll guide you through. But yet we expect large returns. So here's what we do in our system, the threshold. If you notice, you have investment and return. So the investment is time. The return is your output. So investment is input, return is output. So if you notice on the chart, we have time. There's more time that you should spend with the new person and expect less result. So more time, input of investment, output, less return. Because here you're building the foundation. You're building a foundation for sustainable growth. You brought this person in and you expect them to perform long term. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So the first strategy that the leader should employ is spending time with the person. The strategy here is to instruct, give tasks, things to do. You're instructing this person and you're expecting low returns. Hopefully now we can move the person up to the next phase, which is intermediate, then advanced. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Next slide, Oz. All right, here we go. So this is what it looks like, right? Beginner. As the leader, you instruct. You give them the task list, the to-do list, products and services, monitor progress, and you give them encouragement because that's what they're looking for, to be encouraged. Your return on that investment is going to be minimal because they're supporting the team. they're learning, and they are applying. So as a beginner, some of the things that you will see is that they're eager to learn. They're motivated. They want to do well because it's a new position or it's a new job, a new company. They're supporting the team. Your input with investment is greater than the output with the return. Let's go to the next slide. So now we've moved the person up. They're set. They're ready to go. They're staying on the job. Now we're going to move them up to the intermediate stage or phase. And here is where it's about 50-50. Investment versus return. The input equals the output. So your strategy is to inspect what you expect. You're going to give them guidance. You're going to give them support passively, give them recognition and encouragement. That's what you're putting in, investing in this person. Your return now is that this person is building relationships. They're finally feeling comfortable, what we call, again, their sea legs. They're feeling comfortable, feeling good about themselves. They're making relationships, building relationships. They're managing their own responsibilities. You're no longer doing that for them. And what you're seeing or observing is increased results. All because you built the foundation at the beginner stage. So now they're more confident within themselves. They're doing well. They're persevering. They've gone past the 30, 60, 90 days. They're feeling more competent. They're achieving some more. Where there once were some hesitancy, now they tend to cut loose a little bit because they're building relationships within the team or within the organization. And it's about 50-50. Input equals output. So the question is how does someone, what time frame does it take for someone to go from beginner to intermediate? Well, that's totally up to the person. It's totally up to you as their leader. Again, we're talking about leadership. We're talking about small business. You're building a small business as a team. It could be a team of 2 or it could be a team of 10,000. The theory and the concept remains the same. It doesn't change. So how long does it take to go from beginner to intermediate depends on the person, and it also depends on your acumen as a leader, your leadership acumen, your ability to teach, your ability to encourage, your ability now to check in and inspect. The good news is that if the person has been around for a long time within the same organization, within your company, the acceleration is much faster because the culture is there. They understand the culture. They understand what you're doing. They understand you and their fellow teammates. So after the intermediate, our job now is to guide them if they want to. Again, it comes down to their desired outcome. Where do they see themselves going? And that's a conversation that you should have with your team. What's important to them? Where is the growth? Where do they see themselves in the next 6 months, a year, 18 months, 5 years? And then your job as a leader is to help them get there. Leadership is about influence. Let's move forward. Next slide. The final phase in the equation is advance. This is where the person now has mastered everything within the organization. They're extremely profitable. So if you were to put a financial number on that person, you will see that they are extremely profitable to your organization, to your company, to your business. You don't want to lose this person because it has taken time to move them from beginner to intermediate to advance. This person may now want to help others because they have achieved so much. They're at a point where they can work with others, develop others. They're looking for additional responsibilities. They're carrying a leadership load. Others are looking to them for guidance, to be a role model, to be their coach. Now that could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing, depending on the person. Because what you will find, or you may find, is that at this point, the person has developed some habits that may be not so good, may take shortcuts. And if you allow them to coach or teach or train the beginner, that beginner can also develop some bad habits. So you want to make sure that this is someone, when you're given responsibility to them, that this is someone that understands what leadership is all about, that understands the power of responsibility, and understand the importance of teaching and training and coaching. So at this point now, you are spending less time with this person because they're a master, right? They're at the advanced stage. They don't need you to be micromanaging them at this point. You've taken the reins away from them. This point now, you're more of a collaborator with this individual as opposed to instructing them. You're allowing them, looking for opportunities to allow them to influence others. Again, whether you have to determine if the behavior and the actions of this person is such that you can entrust them with the new person, male or female, right? So you have to understand that and be able to deal with that. You have to really appreciate this person. Show them that you appreciate what they're doing. Give them some kudos in front of others if they desire that. Because not everyone would like to be acknowledged in front of their peers. That's another topic that we can talk about, that we'll talk about tomorrow. But this is an important phase. This is an important stage in the development of whether it's yourself, whether it's your employee, whether it's your team or team members. At this level, the person is more team focused. They're at the point where there's maximum productivity. You can't get any more from them. They've reached that point. They're either looking for a promotion within the organization or they're looking elsewhere. So if your organization, your company does not have opportunities for them, does not cherish them, does not appreciate them, they may go elsewhere. Here is where their output, in terms of productivity, their output is greater than their input. Remember, the input is about time spent. So the investment in time is less than the output that you are receiving from them. As I said, they're seeking promotion in one way or the other, either internally or externally, where they may leave. Now, at this stage, you may see some cracks come open. And why is that? Because what happens now is that as you give them more responsibility as a leader, if you have not trained or developed this person in leadership, they may be good at sales, but they may not be good at sales management. They may be good in customer satisfaction, but they may not be good in terms of leading a customer experience team. They may be a good trainer, but they may not be a good training leader. They may be a good banker, but they may not be a good manager of tellers. So they may be a good designer, but they may not be a leader of designers. So you have to understand this, is that now, as you allow them greater responsibility as a leader, you also have to do your due diligence in ensuring that you've trained and developed and equipped them for leadership. So the impetus is not on them, it's on you. Because it is going to happen as they start to grow, as they start to take on different responsibilities. If the development is not there, you are going to see some deficits. So the impetus is on you in terms of development. You'll see some deficits exposed. Now this person is really cutting up, right? They've made it, they've arrived. So now what you're witnessing now is someone that is overconfident. They think they are the person. They think they got it going on. No one can touch them. And as a leader, you have to be responsible and manage then that, whether it's in your business or within an organization, whatever it is, you have to manage that and understand that overconfidence can be a disaster to your team. I get the question all the time when I'm doing this is, how long does it take someone to go from intermediate to advanced? Right? The first question is, how long does it go from beginner to intermediate? How long does that happen? And then the second one is, how long does it take to go from intermediate to advanced? I will tell you that most people stay at the intermediate stage. Reason why? It's convenient. It's easy. It doesn't take a lot of work. You don't have to go the extra mile. So most people will stay at the intermediate stage. That is the largest area when we look at. But how long does it take? Solely depends on the person. It depends on where the person is in their career. It depends on the skill set, the competency that the person brings, and the willingness to be open to learn. Because all of this work is about learning and development. It's a willingness to accept learning from others. Some of us sometimes think that we're too good. So as a result, we're what we call not coachable, not teachable, not trainable. So we are going to rest where we are. There's a quote that I use all the time, and I'll give you permission to use this. Growth is only experienced when you make the decision to step out of your comfort zone. The key words there is make the decision. So it has to be a decision on your part to step out of the comfort zone, to go from where you are to where you want to be, to go from intermediate to advanced. Because in making that decision, it's going to take some work on your part. It's going to take some commitment on your part. It's going to take some changing of mindset on your part. It's going to, that mindset from being comfortable to the mindset now that I need more. In order to get more, I have to do more. I have to listen more. So the mindset has to shift. So there are a number of things that we have to do individually to get from intermediate to advanced, if that's where you want to go. So how long does it take? It's totally up to the person and their willingness to put in the work. Many want success. Some don't want to work for it. But guess what? If you are a small business owner or entrepreneur, there's something called work that's going to take place before you succeed. Right? And going from intermediate to advanced, whether it's you yourself or your teammate, there's some work involved. I always tell folks, only place that success comes before work, S before W, is in a dictionary. So in order to be successful, you're going to have to put in the work. In order to move from intermediate to advanced, to improve your output over your input, there is some work involved. So with that said, I'm going to open it up again. We're going to open it up for questions. Let's see if you have any questions for me. You can put that in the chat. I think it's easier to put in the chat as opposed to Oz and his team open up your mic. So go ahead if you have any questions. Give you a couple of minutes. All right. Oz, what are some signs? Oh, Ben is on fire. What are some signs that someone's attitude is not in the right place? Wow. That's some loaded questions there, Ben. There are a couple of them. Number one, I like to say if the person is always complaining, right? They're never happy. They're always complaining. Everyone is around them. There's no personal responsibility. And you're onto something here because attitude determines your altitude. Dirty attitude, limited altitude. So one sign that someone's attitude is not right, is not in the right place, is complaining. Have you ever been around people who complain for everything? And you just want to say, get away from me. If you've been around that person, everything it's always someone else's fault. It's never your fault. It's never your responsibility. Someone else is to blame but you. Because of them, I'm here. Because I didn't get the loan from the bank, I can't succeed. It's always someone. So that is the first one, is in terms of signs. Another sign, if someone's heart or attitude is not in the right place, is, for me, and this is only for me, is the willingness to want to take shortcuts. In business, there's no shortcut to success. Unless you have a bag of money from someone, from inheritance, your parents or grandparents give you the company, but there's no shortcut to success. So if someone's attitude is about shortcuts and always looking for shortcuts, their attitude is not in the right place. Because as an entrepreneur, as a small business owner, even as a leader, everything you do is going to take work. You're going to be busting your behind. So sometimes we want success, but we're not willing to pay the work. We're not willing to pay the cost. And there's a high cost of success, personally and professionally. So you have to determine that. So Ben, I think that was some of the things that I look for in terms of attitude. When you see this, how do you approach them before it get out of hand? Piggybacking off of Ben's question. So you have to sit down. This is a conversation that came in. Really sit down with the person and find out exactly what's going on. There's something that we use in the company called, there's a book that we use, and in that book has a model which we call a success equation. And we use this for leadership training. And in that success equation, it's about aptitude, attitude, and available resources. So it's having a conversation to see where the person is at, what's going on, right? Because it's about their attitude. We talked about training to aptitude, coaching to attitude. Because I can't coach someone if they don't know how to do something. I have to teach them or train them. That's another topic. But it's about really finding out, where are they? What is going on? What's taking place? Sometimes you have to remove yourself from the situation in order to move forward. If you are in a company, if it's a small business, and let's say you're sitting next to the person, and this person is always complaining, it's never their fault, it's always someone else's fault, you have to take note and maybe remove yourself from them. If you are the boss, if you are the leader, if you're the owner of the company, now you really have to have a conversation with them to find out what's going on. You may even have to give them some books. A great book that I recommend is How to Win Friends and Influence People. Oldie but goodie. So you may talk about development and start to give them some books, changing their mindset, changing their attitude. So they may need a checkup from the neck up. Right? So how do you give them a checkup from the neck up? Give them development, feed them some positive things, because whatever comes in here goes out. So if negative comes in, negative will go out. If positive comes in, positive will go out. So it's about you changing their mindset. It's about you assisting them. But the first part of it is to have a communication, have a talk with them, especially if you're leading that team. If it's part of your organization, you need to have a conversation, find out what's going on. Where are they? What's taking place? Because we never know what is taking place in someone else's life. We never know what that person has gone through. We never know what that person has experienced. So we cannot judge them without knowing what they've gone through and what is the root cause of that situation that's causing them to be like this. Maybe it was something that they saw. It was a behavior that they saw and growing up. And they've modeled that behavior. And they don't know any different because it's all they've been exposed to. So it's coming upon you now to really understand and deal with that situation. Great. So thank you so very much. Just as we wrap up, we talked about from today, from the keynote with Dr. Paul, the importance of community, the importance of leadership, the importance of keep going, and the importance of always moving forward. Then we talked, CJ talked about the importance of hiring the right individuals, recruiting and hiring. Then we have the connection where there was true connection within the group. There was Dr. Vicky from Atlanta who give Ibana a connection and also give Akima a connection. So we had true connection within that small group. And then we learned about developing your team. And we ended with Ben with a fantastic performance. So thank you all. Again, the dashboard is available. We will close it down probably about 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock tonight so that we can get ready for tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll start at 10 o'clock again. Doors open at 9 o'clock. Just to give you a lineup for tomorrow, we will start off with leadership essentials, what it means to be a leader. We'll talk about time management. We all have 24 hours in a day. How do we as business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, key decision makers, how do we manage those 24 hours? Then we'll have a panel discussion with some of just a select few of business owners, leaders, and entrepreneurs. Give you an opportunity to ask questions of that panel. Then we'll move into relationships, results through relationships. We all want results, but sometimes we're challenged with relationships. So I'm going to talk about results through relationships, and then we will end the day tomorrow with Carol, who will speak on how do we handle the stress that exists in our lives. And then tomorrow evening, after we end up, we'll have a nice mix and mingle where you'll be able to talk with some of the speakers. And then that will be it for Thursday. Friday, we'll start back at 10 o'clock and we will end around 3 o'clock. The first speaker on Friday will speak about the customer experience. Then we'll move into the power of social media. And then we'll end the day and the conference with aligning culture with your business strategy. So that's about it. Let's see if there's anything else. I don't think we have anything. I want to thank you for attending today. It was an awesome day, great start. I know there were quite a few people that wanted to come today, but they're actually coming tomorrow and Friday, but that's okay. Make it as you wish. This is a conference that is flexible based on your time. We all know that we have a busy schedule, especially going back to the workforce or whether we are homeschooling kids. So until then, have a good night. We will see you tomorrow at 9:30.